The Democrats' counter memo was just released, and Shiff already has egg on his face by Erin Moreno for TruthFeedNews.com. The Democrats' rebuttal to the GOP FISA memo has been officially released, and already one major aspect is being called into question. The overall narrative of the Dems' counter memo is that the FBI and DOJ followed proper procedure with the FISA courts when obtaining the warrants by fully disclosing the details surrounding the dossier, and even saying that the DOJ corroborated part of Steele's dossier. But according to Catherine Herridge, that directly contradicts James Comey's testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee on the dossier, where he said the allegations in the document were salacious and largely unverified. Quite a conflict with Schiff's counter memo stating it was a squeaky clean document verified by the DOJ. From Fox News, the House Intelligence Committee on Saturday released a long-awaited Democratic rebuttal to a GOP memo that outlined alleged government surveillance abuses during the 2016 presidential campaign. The rebuttal claims that officials at the FBI and Justice Department did not abuse the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act FISA process, omit material information, or subvert this vital tool to spy on the Trump campaign. The Democratic memo was voted out of committee earlier this month, but was ordered to be redrafted after the White House demanded that sensitive information be stripped out because the document, before the document be made public. The Justice Department and the FBI claimed the initial draft would reveal information about sources and methods, ongoing investigations, and other sensitive information. Democrats used the memo to undermine claims in the GOP memo released this month that the FBI and DOJ relied on a Democrat-funded anti-Trump dossier to ask the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for a warrant to monitor Trump advisor Carter Page. And here is the unclassified memo that they released. That Republican memo also claims that the agencies left out the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign's funding of the dossier, as well as the anti-Trump motivations of author Christopher Steele in its request for a warrant. Republicans have pointed to the revelations as proof that the intelligence agencies had abused surveillance powers, but the Democratic rebuttal backed the FBI and DOJ in its seeking of the FISA warrant. In fact, DOJ and the FBI would have been remiss in their duty to protect the country had they not sought a FISA warrant and repeated renewals to conduct temporary surveillance of Carter Page, someone the FBI assessed to be an agent of the Russian government. How could that be when Carter Page actually worked for the FBI and brought somebody to justice through the FBI and worked for the Democratic Party in the 1990s, you see? So they used Page in order to get that FISA warrant. So I don't know what these Democrats are talking about. The rebuttal said, adding that the DOJ met the rigor, transparency, and evidentiary basis needed to meet the FISA probable cause requirement. Yeah, you set it up that way. They did it on Carter Page. They used Carter Page. He was an FBI patsy. Democratic rebuttal finds that the FBI had an independent basis for investigating Page's motivations and that he had been targeted for recruitment by the Russians. How could that be when he already had won even an award for bringing in some Russians to justice, Carter Page? I mean, while working for the FBI. Oh my, what a crock. It also claims that the DOJ repeatedly informed the court about Steele's background, credibility, and potential bias. It also claims that the Justice Department informed the FISA court that Steele was hired by politically motivated U.S. persons and entities, and that his research appeared intended for use to discredit Trump's campaign. The memo, however, does not directly challenge the Republican assertion that former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe testified to the House committee that they would not have sought the Page surveillance warrant if it hadn't been for the dossier. So right then and there, it throws your whole thing out the window. That they, because of the dossier, they did the surveillance on Trump Tower to get the FISA warrant, but they couldn't use every time they used Trump's name, the FISA court would deny them. That's why the FBI used Carter Page's name, and that's how they got the extended FISA warrants every 90 days. Yeah? So let's just take a listen here, because, you know, whatever this Adam Shiff, excuse me, is saying is a crock.
So to me is that this does appear to be in direct conflict with what then FBI Director James Comey testified to. Is that this does appear to be in direct conflict with what then FBI Director James Comey testified to before the Senate Intelligence Committee, that several months later, with the incoming president, when he briefed him at Trump Tower, he briefed him that these allegations were largely unverified and salacious. So this seems to be a far cry, or there's a lot of daylight between what Comey testified to and what's being claimed in the Democrats' memo. I'm now halfway through at page 5, and I want to draw your attention rather to a key section right here, and it goes to one of the central findings of the Republican memo, that the dossier's funding, that it was funded by the DNC and Clinton campaign, that this was never directly shared with the National Security Court that granted the surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aide Carter Page. And their argument is that the court really should have known the specifics of this research document, and that there was really an agenda behind it.
Correct.
What the Democrats write on this front is that the information that the dossier was a political document was shared by the FISA court, but that issues surrounding the specific identities of the individuals and groups involved were not shared with the court. They were shielded, and to use my own language, this was in keeping with the FBI's standard practice of trying to protect sources and methods. You and folks at home can decide whether that was a legitimate use of that shielding tactic in this particular case. So rather than tell the court it was the DNC and the Clinton campaign, they chose to use language such as person one was hired by law firm one, then used a research firm, two, in order to put this information together. So they describe it as a political document, but they do not get to the specifics of the DNC and the Clinton campaign funding it.
They don't get to the specifics, in other words. They hid that from the court, that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton, in other words, because they say DNC and all this. Why go around DNC and all of this? It was Hillary Clinton that funded it. So they didn't tell the court, really. Even though the judge in that case, who stepped down, he knew. But there were certain protocols that he had to take in order to grant this FISA warrant, you see? That's why he stepped down. He wants to get out of the way, and that was an Obama-appointed judge.
Now, one of the critical issues in the Republican staff memo is that Christopher Steele, his contact was terminated with the FBI after they concluded that he had lied about his contacts with the media. He was directed by Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm, to brief a half dozen American media outlets about the findings of the dossier in an effort to sort of seed that narrative in media reporting. And what the Democrats' version says right here is that once the FBI cut off contact with Christopher Steele, the British spy, this was shared with the court, and they also shared with the court in the January 2018 renewal. So there were multiple renewals of the surveillance warrant for Carter Page. That one of the reasons Steele had made disclosures is that he was extremely frustrated with Director James Comey's decision to reopen the Clinton email case just 10 days before the 2016 election.
He had no Comey had no choice Comey would have swept the emails right under the rug, but Comey had no choice because the New York Police Department had hold of Anthony Weiner's laptop. That's why Comey had to. Comey wouldn't have opened the email investigation on Hillary Clinton, but he had no choice because the cops in New York had a hold of Anthony Weiner's laptop.
You talked about Steele's frustration with Comey, though I've yet to see a reference here to Steele's own statements that he had this sort of personal animus and wanted to do whatever it took to stop candidate Trump. Final point before I send it.
Because he was being paid to stop Trump, and he would get extra money from Hillary if he stopped Trump.
Back to you. There's been widespread reporting that the FBI paid Christopher Steele for this work on the dossier, but the Democrats' memo states very clearly that the Justice Department never paid Steele for the dossier work. It was correct that the FBI had authorized payment for the work, but in effect the check was never written and sent and cashed by Steele. So they authorized payment, but ultimately, this is a quote, ultimately never received payment from the FBI for any dossier related information. So in summary here, they make the argument that the FBI and Justice Department really did everything they needed to do when they told the FISA court it was a political document, the Trump dossier. They didn't feel, because the FBI has standards in terms of shielding sources and methods, they didn't need to get into the specifics of it was the DNC and the Clinton campaign that paid for it. Number two, they say that they shared with the court that he had been terminated and that he was personally angry with Director Comey for reopening the email case just a few days before the election because this was very damaging to her prospects. And number three, they make the case that Steele was never paid by the FBI for his work.
Okay.
So I'll let you know as I get more.
Exactly. All important points.
And I forgot why the FBI stopped the payment to Steele. I forgot the reason why. If anybody of you remember why that $50,000 check wasn't given to or cashed by Steele. Well, the FBI said that they didn't pay him because I don't know the reason. I forgot the reason why that check wasn't cashed. But again, why don't they say that Comey wasn't going to open the case because the city cops had a hold of Anthony Weiner's laptop? That's why the emails were opened up again. They had no choice. They had no choice. And everybody was working towards Hillary Clinton. And this Adam Shiff, he's got a lot to lose because he's a criminal. He's a criminal, and he's got a lot to lose because Hillary lost. And they have a lot of crooked dealings that I don't get into involved where they're making money. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.